The Song Celestial and the Higher Consciousness. L. Adams Beck. Even in India are many misconceptions as to what is meant by the enfranchisement of the soul as taught in Vedantic philosophy, that enfranchisement by which the perceptions are cleared and the inward sight sees the universe as it is in truth. This subject begins to be touched in Western philosophy. Dr. Book wrote a book chiefly upon Western experiences, which he called Cosmic Consciousness. And in books by other writers, allusions to the subject are increasing, though for want of knowledge of Vedantic teaching, they are not perhaps very well understood by the general reader. In writing in this chapter of the Song of the Lord, or Song Celestial, the Bhagavad Gita, this mystic state of consciousness cannot be passed over, because that famous and noble book offers one of the most remarkable descriptions of the way to it and the achievement. In India exist two great epics in some respects, comparable to the Homeric epics, in that they embody the lives or legends of national heroes, or those who have attained to that position by reason of their place in these national epics. But there is a great difference. The Indian epics exist to represent not only history and patriotism, but also the philosophy and religion of the people. Like the Homeric heroes, the Indian protagonists are often of immortal descent. The gods move through the pages at home with them. But moral and philosophic lessons are drawn which have the weight and sanctity of scriptures. And the Mahabharata and Ramayana may in consequence be said to be the Bibles of the people, as well as their inexhaustible treasure houses of story. The Mahabharata is sometimes honored with the title of the fifth Veda. A treasury of story indeed. I read almost daily in both, marveling at the vast fertility, the tropic splendor of romance unfolded in either, but still more at the nobility of ideals set forth, the great passion for the unseen, the beautiful and entirely desirable, both in man and woman, which has always been the soul of India. The Mahabharata is a vast poem, a world in itself. It consists of about 100,000 shlokas or stanzas. It comes from the hand of no one man. It is not even a compilation in the strictest sense of the word. It would seem to have grown by the force of accretion, legends, reflections, parables, fitting in here and there as if drawn by affinity. It is thought that the nucleus of the story began about 3000 BC in the subject of a struggle between two clans for the mastery in the country now known as Sirhind, between the Jumna and Sutlej rivers. That in itself was as simple a story as the rape of Helen and the Trojan Wars, but it grew and grew. Through its stages of growth I will not follow, for that would take volumes, and I am concerned only with a part. In this vast and little-known epic, a series of gorgeously coloured romances of lovely queens and mighty kings, full of a fascination that only those who care for true romance can realise, lies embedded a pearl of whose beauty and lustre the world is aware. It is known as the Lord's Song, or the Song Celestial, and it represents one of the highest flights of the conditioned spirit to its unconditioned source ever achieved. It is assigned to the 5th century BC, though opinions as to dates vary. William von Humboldt voices the opinion of many in describing it as the most beautiful, perhaps the only true philosophical song existing in any known language. The story is briefly this. It is a struggle between the powers of good and evil, of justice and injustice. The good is represented by the 5 Pandava princes, brothers, one of them the king Yudhishthira, and their wife, the princess Draupadi, who represents all that is noble and desirable in womanhood. Evil is represented by their cousins, the Kuru princes. I wish I had space for the adventures and deadly insults which led finally to a great pitched battle for supremacy at Kurukshetra. Of the 5 Pandava princes, Arjuna, the great archer, with his mighty bow Gandiva, is the most human and lovable. He is about to enter the fight, terrible in destruction as a god, and his friend the god Krishna, most beloved of all Indian deities, has honored him by acting as his charioteer. The air resounds with war cries and drums and the furious roar of conch shells, each called by its name as though it were a living personality. The high-haired one, Krishna, blew Panchajanya. The wealth winner, Arjuna, blew God's gift. The doer of grim deeds, Wolf Baul, Bhima, a Pandava prince, blew the great conch Pandra. The wild roar cleft the hearts of the enemy and made the heavens and the earth to ring. Arjuna shouts to Krishna, "Set my chariot, O never-failing, midway between the two armies, while I behold those with whom I must strive." All is ready for the decisive battle. Arjuna, looking over the battlefield, perceives his brothers led by King Yudhishthira the eldest. But on the other side, though he sees the hated Duryodhana and others who have insulted and trampled their rights, he beholds also beloved, reverenced, and kindred faces, the noble Bhishma and others, cousins and friends whom he loves and honors. Suddenly, the horror of civil war, and above all, war between kindred rushes upon him, and brings with it a crisis very well known to psychologists, which may be called the dark night of the soul. Henceforth, he represents the eternal question of mankind, as Job does in the Hebrew scripture. He turns to the god Krishna, his charioteer, who has already set his chariot midway between the opposing hosts, and speaks, "As I look, O Krishna, upon these kinsfolk meeting for battle, my limbs fail, and my face withers. Trembling comes upon my body, and the upstanding of hair. Gandiva, the bow, falls from my hand, and my skin burns. I cannot stand in my place. My mind whirls. Contrary are the omens, O long-haired one. I see no blessing from the slaughter of kinsfolk. I desire not victory, O Krishna, nor kingship, nor delights. What shall kingship avail me, O Lord of herds, or pleasures of life? Teachers, fathers, sons, grandsons, kinsmen also. These though they smite me, I would not smite. O troubler of the folk, shall not we with clear sight see the sin of destroying a race? Ah me, a heavy sin have we resolved to do, that we strive to slay our kin from lust after the sweets of kingship. Better it were for me if these folk with armed hand should slay me unresisting in the fight." So spake Arjuna, and sat down on the seat of the chariot, and he let fall his bow and arrows, for his heart was heavy with sorrow. This section is entitled, "The Rule of Arjuna's Despair." The next is called "The Communion of the Blessed Krishna and Arjuna." Krishna speaks, "Why, O Arjuna, has come upon you this defilement, such as is felt by the ignoble? Cease from this base faintness of heart, O affrighter of the foe." Arjuna speaks, "O Madhu's slayer, how shall I contend against Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of honor? More blessed would it be to eat the food of beggary without the slaughter of noble masters. We know not which is best, whether that we should overcome them or they overcome us. My soul is stricken with the stain of unmanliness. My mind, all unsure of the law, I ask you, tell me clearly the more blessed way. I am your disciple. Teach me." So spoke to Krishna the terror of foes. "I will not war," he said to the Lord of Herds, and so made an end of speaking. And as he sat despairing, the high-haired lord with seeming smile spoke, "You grieve over those for whom grief is unmeet. The instructed grieve not at all either for those whose lives are fled or for those who live. Never have I not existed. Never have you, nor these princely men, not existed. Never shall the time come when we do not exist. As the body's tenant, the soul, goes through childhood, manhood, and old age in his body, so does it pass to other bodies. It is only the stirring of the instruments of the senses that begets cold and heat, pleasure and pain. It is they that come and go and do not stay. Bear with them, son of Pritha. But know that that which pervades the universe is imperishable. None can destroy that changeless one. It is the bodies of the everlasting, incomprehensible body-dweller which only have an end. Therefore fight. He who thinks one man a slayer and thinks the other slain is without perception. This soul slays not, nor is it slain. This never is born nor dies, nor can it ever come to non-existence. This unborn, everlasting ancient is not slain when the body is slain. As a man lays aside outworn garments and takes others that are new, so the body-dweller puts away outworn bodies and goes to others that are new. It may be interesting here to give Sir Edwin Arnold's translation of this passage. Nay, but as when one layeth his worn-out robes away, and taking new ones saith, These will I wear today. So putteth by the Spirit lightly its garb of flesh, and passeth to inherit a residence afresh. Krishna continues, You do ill to sorrow for any born beings. To a warrior there is nothing more blessed than a lawful strife. Happy the warriors, O son of Pritha, to whom such an unsought strife opens the door of paradise, holding in indifference pleasure and pain, gain and loss, conquest and defeat, make ready for the fight. Thus shall you touch no sin. Therefore do your deeds indifferent to gain or failure. Set yourself to the rule. Skill in works is the rule. Arjuna speaks still pleading in doubt for knowledge of the rule. How shall a man say in these matters? What do? Krishna replies. A strange scene for such an argument with the battlefield set, swords loosened, arrows on the string. Yet all pauses, as it were, for the end of this strange drama. He who is without desire for anything, and neither loves nor loathes whatever fortune befall him, has wisdom securely based. When such a one draws in the feelers of his senses as a tortoise retracts its limbs, he has wisdom securely based. Only he who entirely holds back his senses from desire of the sense objects has wisdom securely rooted. The man who casts off all desires with no thought of mine or me enters the peace. This is the state of abiding in Brahman, O son of Pritha. He that has entered it is not confounded. If even at his last hour he enters, he passes to absorption in Brahm. So the soul is the only pure and untainted spectator of the struggles of mind and body. The idea of struggle, of right and wrongdoing, is confined only to the world as the senses present the world. It is a dream, or rather, a distortion. Let the prince rise above it to the truth, the passionless impassivity of the soul. But yet Arjuna is not at peace, and still the battle waits. Again he questions the troubler of the folk. What is the certain way by which he can win to assurance in this dreadful entanglement of right and wrong? The god answers, In this world the foundation is twofold. There is the wisdom rule, and the rule of good deeds without being hampered by good deeds. No man can be idle, therefore do your ordained deeds according to the law, for deeds are better than idleness. Even the subsistence of the body cannot be gained from idleness. But yet, the world is fettered by deed, excepting in the deed which has sacrifice for its aim. Fulfill your deeds with this aim, and stand free from attachment to your deeds, O son of Pritha. In the lines that follow, the god points out how he also works in the world of appearances as man knows it, and how it would fall into ruin if he did not, yet how he is changeless, unmoving throughout. Here is magnificently drawn the picture of the personal God who is but an image cast on the mind of man, a distorted image of the unchanging Absolute. In other words, here he presents the truth, and beside it, the relative partial truth by which man must live in this world until he has attained the higher perception. There is nothing in the three worlds that I must needs do, nothing that I have not, yet I work. Deeds are done by the moods of nature. I created the four castes according to this order of moods and deeds. Know that I am the doer of that deed, yet I do no deeds. I am unchanging. Deeds are done altogether only by the appearances of nature, but he whose self is confounded by the thought of I imagines I am the doer of these. But the man who knows the truth of the two orders of aspects and deeds, O mighty armed one, knows that appearances dwell in appearances, and he has no attachment. Casting off all your deeds upon me, fixed on the one absolute self, be without desire and without aims or mine. And fight. Those who fulfill my teaching are released from deeds. But Arjuna, still seeing this serene blue dimly through the mists of earth's passions, must still question. Then what moves a man to sin, dragged ever against his will as if violently? Krishna speaks. Love and anger, sprung from fiery desire, mighty to devour, mighty to evil, these are the foe. As fire is smothered in smoke, as a mirror with soilure, as the germ by a membrane, so is the world observed. The knowledge of the wise man is obscured by this, his eternal, shape-changing enemy, hard to drive off and greedy. The sense instruments, mind and reason, are called its seat. Through these it confounds the body's tenant, hiding knowledge. But knowing the self to be higher than reason, and leaning yourself on self, O mighty one, slay this difficult foe. Here follows a beautiful passage in which the rule of good deeds, the rule of wisdom, the rule of the discipline of the yogin, and that of loving devotion to the divine are all gathered together like marshaled warriors for an attack on that conception of the world presented by the false report of the senses. Bliss consists in following in the spirit of true and joyous renunciation. There is bliss in doing these things, but beyond even these, there is a higher bliss in renouncing them one and all when the true perception is reached, which transcends them. Therefore arise, son of Bharata's race, and comprehend the law, slaying with the sword of wisdom this unbelief in the self, an unbelief which lurks born of ignorance in your heart. And still Arjuna cannot understand. How is it possible there should be a state above good deeds? And still patient, the divine charioteer expounds, he who knows the truth knows well that he does no deeds at all, though he sees, eats, wakes, sleeps, breathes. For he remembers that the sense instruments are the objects of the sense instruments. Therefore they are as illusory as the senses themselves. The Supreme accepts neither any man's sin nor his good deed. The instructed see indifferently a wise and accomplished Brahmin or an outcast, knowing that I am he in whom sacrifice and austerity meet, the sovereign of all, the world's friend of all beings he wins to peace. Then follows a superb and mystic passage on the serene detachment of the yogin, abiding alone in a secret place, utterly subdued in mind, without desire and without possessions, calm of spirit, perfect in the vow of chastity, given over to me. How great is the charm by which these thinkers of India, extinguishing every desire but the desire for the one, the alone, draw the soul by a fascination irresistible as the music of Krishna's own flute, that whoso hears must follow. Magnificent are the teachings of the Upanishads, most wonderful the commentaries upon them of Shankara and the Sankhya, that other brilliant and akin system of high philosophy. But the song celestial, in which all these struggle, as it were, for agreement, is more divinely beautiful than all. It may be that its setting helps it, the silent waiting battlefield, the tortured soul of Arjuna, the serene presence of the conditioned deity, who yet, in another aspect, is the unconditioned. But in all spiritual writing, I know none that wins the heart and allegiance like this, or so overflows the soul with peace. The unearthly music proceeds. He who sees me in all things and all in me, he cannot be lost to me, nor I to him. But still, Arjuna trembles beyond the border of realization. How can the fitful, fickle human mind stay itself on so great a certainty? Suppose he essays, but swerves from human appearances of good thought and deeds and the like, and so does not reach the eternal truth. What then? Will he not have sold his birthright for a mess of pottage? Who can be sure of reaching so high, so terrible a goal? There comes an assurance of eternal beauty in word and meaning. Son of Pritha, neither here nor in that other world is there destruction for him, for none that seeks righteousness, beloved, can come to harm. He that falls from the rule still wins to the worlds of them that do right deeds and dwells there many years. And then he is born in the house of pure and well-doing people. There he is given the lordship of the knowledge which he had in his former body. In other words, he has not lost by his former attempt to scale the unthinkable. He has made a blessed place for himself, whence he may renew the attempt. For he is led onward, as it were, without will of his own by that former striving. He will surely in the end know the absolute truth, for the self in him is drawing him to itself. There is nothing higher than I, O winner of wealth. All this universe is strung upon me as rows of jewels upon a string. I am the taste in water, the light in sun and moon, the Aum in the Vedas, manhood in man, the might of the mighty and the heat of the fire, the wisdom of the wise, the splendor of the magnificent. From me come the moods of goodness, fire, and melancholy. I am not in them, but they are in me. And bewildered by these three moods, the whole universe fails in understanding that I sit above them and am changeless. For my divine magic of moods is hard to see through, but they who cling to me transcend this magic. Hearing this loveliness, the prince climbs a step higher into the void. He trembles now on the verge of discovery. What is this Brahman? What is this one self? The Lord speaks. It is the imperishable, the supreme. But the creative force that brings life into being wears the name of deeds. The worlds pass and are gone, but for them who have come to me is no rebirth. Now will I declare a royal mystery. By me, formless, is this universe filled. When a cycle is ended, all beings re-enter into my nature. When a cycle begins again, I remold them. Yet I am not fettered by deeds, O winner of wealth, for I am indifferent and unattached to deeds. But to those who desire me, I give power to win and maintain. They who worship other gods and offer to them with faith, in truth, make offering to me, though not according to ordinance. For I am he that has lordship of all sacrifices. If an eager one sets before me a leaf, a flower, water, I am content with this devotion. Even they that are born of sin, turning to me, enter the high path. So it proceeds, and Arjuna, catching flame at fire, at last breaks into the cry, Supreme art. Thou, supreme glory, perfect in power and purity. And hearing as the mystic song proceeds, he is swept away, battlefield, himself, all forgotten, and he prays for the vision of the supreme consciousness of the Supreme. Show me thy changeless self, O sovereign of the rule. And in a flash he sees, as if the light of 1,000 suns should suddenly rise in the heavens. Nowhere so greatly is the vision set forth as here. I have not space for it. Thereupon the winner of wealth, struck with bewilderment, hair standing on end, bowing his head, with clasped hands addressed the divine. God, in thy body I see all the gods. As moths with exceeding speed seek a fire, so thou devourest and lickest up the worlds. I cannot give what follows, the trembling speech of the mortal on whom the divine breaks in a wave of thunder. It must be read uncondensed, and as it is. The Lord speaks. I am time that works the destruction of worlds when they are ripe. How can these warriors live even if you strike not? By me they, and all, are doomed to death. Arise, fight. So it proceeds, and in the end fulfilled with understanding, Arjuna speaks. Bewilderment is ended. By thy grace I have received wisdom. Freed am I from doubt. I will obey. And like a mighty warrior he acquits himself in the battle, conquering and to conquer, and all is better than well. Ended is this book of the song. What I have given is only the condensation of a few passages. Those who read the Song Celestial must not expect any logical solution of the problem of how the Absolute becomes for the moment the conditioned or personal God. Logic has no foothold in such spheres. The sole answer is that Arjuna has at first eyes only for that plane. He sees the deity from the human plane, and therefore sees him under, shall we call it, semi-human conditions. Later his eyes are opened. He realizes the absolute, and all problems are solved for him, or rather exist no longer. There can be no higher expression of united religion and philosophy than the Bhagavad Gita, no more powerful expression of the four yogas by which the spirit of man may live, the four roads which are yet one and indivisible. The word Maya, to which I have alluded before, is often used in the Song Celestial. Perhaps the best translation in this case may be partial consciousness, which of course results in distorted and therefore entirely misleading views as to the real constitution of the universe. It is sometimes alluded to as the magic of the Supreme. It will be noted that when Arjuna receives the flash of universal consciousness, it comes in the form of more than mortal light. As it says in the Song Celestial, another sun shines there, another moon, another light, not dusk, nor dawn, nor noon, and they who once beholding come no more. They have attained my peace, life's utmost boon. But the light at first dazzles. Thus says one of the books on the Vedanta. It is light inside, light outside, a light alone and holier than holy. It is the light that lights all light, uncaused, and it is the light of the self. So when the Indian Saint Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who died about 40 years ago, received the higher consciousness, it is told that he was passing through the cornfields near his native village when suddenly he beheld glory and lost all sense consciousness. Afterwards he was able to describe it. He said, "The living light does not burn. It is like the light of a jewel, shining yet soft, cool and soothing. It does not burn. It brings peace and bliss." Yet I think this varies in different experiences. In the case of St. Paul, it was a searing, blinding flash, but this may be perhaps accounted for by his former violences and persecutions. The spirit may have been insufficiently prepared in certain directions. In the case of Muhammad, the experience is said to have befallen him in the solitude of a cave on Mount Hera, about 3 leagues from Mecca, where he was lost in meditation. As in the night he lay wrapped in his mantle, he heard a voice calling, and when he uncovered his head, a flood of unearthly light broke upon him so intolerable that he swooned away. It was an illumination of the understanding also, and he beheld the decrees of God. Sometimes the revelation comes in the form of a flood of joy, which is described in India as indivisible existence, knowledge, and absolute bliss. There can never be any more grief or perplexity for those who have once been submerged in this shining ocean. In India, in relation to this consciousness, all roads lead home. A prayer daily repeated by millions says, "As different streams, having different sources, and with wanderings crooked or straight, all reach the sea, so, Lord, the different paths which men take, guided by their different tendencies, all lead to Thee." In all who receive this consciousness appears the Vedantic realization that perception means wisdom as opposed to ignorance, and that such phrases as good and evil are left behind and below. I should like to point how small beside this attainment of the higher consciousness and true supermanhood, to which I should have given volumes instead of pages, appears the Nietzschean ideal of the Superman, and yet how likely to catch the more superficial spiritual sense of Europe. It cannot even be said to be original in all that is of worth in it. Confucius had conceived the Superman 2 millenniums before, and India, in the Vedantic and Buddhist systems, had given the world an ideal of what the highest form of manhood might be. But neither India nor China had divested that ideal of what it pleases Nietzsche to call slave morality. It still kept the chivalry of pity. A very good case for Nietzsche can be made if that side of his unbalanced teaching is omitted, but never if it is surveyed as a whole. There are sentences which seem to place him in the ranks of those who have perceived, but his pendulum always swings back into the darkness. Nietzsche has the underbred scorn for the weak and sorrowful. The Vedanta, with the Buddha and the Christ, scorns self-pity and mercy to one's own weakness. For these, there is no room in the morality of any of the three. And all three crave power, for a man must acquire much stored power before he can use it to guide and control others. They recognize that no blind man can lead another, but they never identify virtue with power. For they know that power is only a part of virtue, a part which, if it is permitted command, will result in what is called in yoga the lesser samadhi, where excelling knowledge and intellect uncontrolled by love and wisdom will lead a man into the frightful excesses of absolute power, of which the world has seen examples. There is no room in modern life for scornful supremacy of the Nietzsche brand. For this man, who was blind to the higher values, there is no place save as a historic memory in the coming synthesis of philosophy and science. Most truly, he calls himself a decadent, he who enthrones the base individual selfhood in man. The Superman, thus preached by a crazy decadent, opposes the greatest philosophies of all time, and it was surely the reply of ironic fates that the creator of the European ideal of the Superman died helpless and broken in brain. Having omitted the mention of other European philosophers, I have recalled Nietzsche only because, in some respects, he is Europe's answer to the Vedanta. It is to be wished that he, with his great gifts, had known and studied it more fully. We should not then have heard the blind statement that the Superman is not yet born, nor have inherited the flat axiom, "Demand nothing of yourselves contrary to probability." He had never mastered the implications of evolution. An old-fashioned, outworn mode was his, glittering with the lacquer of a brilliant modernity, but no more. Requiescat in pace, and may Europe emancipate itself from the shadow of his tragic optimism. Because it is not necessary to the understanding of the Hindu spirit, nor to any but students of philosophy. I have not dwelt upon all the 6 systems based on the Vedanta as I have on those of Shankara and the Bhagavad Gita. I have felt that the processes of reasoning were of less importance to the general reader than the large result. Yet, for those who care to study, all the 6 systems have deep importance. How profound in the Mimamsa is the thought that the whole universe is only the meaning of words, in other words, that only the idea is real. How great the Vaishnava with its insistence that the divine may be adored through the senses, and that every earthly passion may thus be transmuted into divinity. Even where they appear destructive and contradictory, the heart of them is clear of earthly taint. See compassion pushed even to the extreme by the Jaina system, or comprehend the brilliant, logical clearness with which the Nyaya writes what it considered the skepticism of Buddhism. It is not wonderful that it has been held to be one of the 4 limbs of the Veda, and that Manu recognized it as holy. Even such a realistic system as Nyaya contributed, as do the other 5, to the spiritualization of life. Where Shankara outsoars it is in his knowledge that the methods of reason cannot be applied to the higher flights of religion and philosophy, and the Bhagavad Gita breathes air in which the Nyaya dies. But that does not lessen its importance to students of philosophy, a subject on which I think indeed that none is competent to speak in East or West who does not know the 6 systems. I have not willingly omitted such men as Badarayana and Ramanuja, and must beg remembrance of the fact that this is but a popular and bird's-eye view of a vast subject. Yet I am not without hope that it may send some seekers to the sources of a philosophy which regards this as a mind-born world, and finds its sustenance in ideas, not appearances.